Hello, everyone, and welcome to this grammar unit on how to use commas properly. Most people have a lot of trouble with commas, so hopefully by the end of this particular presentation, you'll know better how to use them. What are commas used for? Well, they are used for a slight pause, but not a complete stop. And they're used for various purposes, and there are many rules attached to them, which is why people tend to get confused about them. For example, one of them is to use commas to separate the items in a series of three or more things. For example, in a sentence like, the boys like playing soccer, hockey, and other sports. Now, you've probably been told by your teachers in the past that this comma right here is optional. No, it is not. You absolutely have to use that comma. Here's why. If you don't use it, you end up with sentences like this. I want to thank my parents, Ayn Rand, and Jesus. Yeah, obviously whoever is making that speech is not the son or daughter of Ayn Rand and Jesus. They instead meant to have a comma right there, and what they meant to say was, I want to thank my parents, I want to thank Ayn Rand, and I want to thank Jesus, which would be done by saying, I want to thank my parents, comma, Ayn Rand, comma, and Jesus. Sorry about the animations on this. It's a lot easier to do this in person. All right. A comma is also used to separate two or more adjectives modifying the same noun, but only if the adjectives could also be separated with and. For example, with the sentence, the human eye is a complex and efficient organ, you can actually do it as the human is a complex, efficient organ, replacing the and with a comma, because these can also be reversed. If you were to reverse them, you would be able to still have it, but there are certain adjectives that cannot be separated in this way. For example, the deep blue sea. We can say the human eye is a complex, efficient organ. We can say the human eye is an efficient, complex organ. We can say the deep blue sea, but we can't say the blue deep sea because of the way what are called cumulative adjectives in English are listed. They take a particular ordering. So you have to make sure that if you've got this form of adjective, which is called a coordinating adjective, then you can use the comma because you can use and. If you cannot use and, then it's a cumulative adjective and you cannot use commas between them. Just as a side note, try putting these adjectives in order in the space below. If you got a piece of paper or a Word document, go ahead and do that, get it ready. And I'd like you to put these adjectives in order. All right? And the adjectives all are going to be part of this phrase, the blank wrestler. All of these adjectives will define that wrestler. Now, try to put those in the correct order. What order would those adjectives go in? And if you need to, you can pause this video so that you can figure out what the actual ordering of the adjectives is. What do you think it could be? I have a feeling that if you are a native English speaker, there's a specific way you're going to order those adjectives. If you've learned English, you know the order that they have to go in because you've been taught the order that these adjectives go in. But there is a correct answer. See if you can figure out what it is. What else are commas used for? They are used to join two complete sentences, which are also known as independent clauses, when those clauses are joined by a coordinated conjunction, which is one of the 7 in English that we list using the acronym FANBOYS. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. If you have one of those 7 coordinating conjunctions between 2 complete sentences, you have to have a comma before it. For example, Stephen read the book, then he wrote a report about it. Those are 2 independent sentences. They could stand alone. You could put a period or full stop here, a period or full stop here, and you'd have 2 complete sentences. If you wanted to join them, you'd split them together with and, or one of the other fanboys, but you'd have to have a comma separating them. Mustafa did not read the book, but he still wrote his report, The Cheater. Yeah, you notice that there you have 2 complete sentences. You put them together. We're using the B in fanboys, which is but, and we're putting a comma between them. You also notice another use of the comma. If you've got some sort of extra thing that you're saying in the sentence, and this is normally called an interjection, it can come at the beginning or the end. In this case, it's coming at the beginning because it's referring to Mustafa, but it's extra to the sentence because if you didn't have that comma, it would say his report, The Cheater. That doesn't make any sense at all. But if you do not have a complete sentence on either side of that and, do not use the comma. This is one of the biggest hypercorrections that students make when they learn comma rules. They put commas everywhere that they see: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Here you have the and, but look at both sides of it. Bree wrote her report, got an A. There's no subject in that second phrase, and that's because these 2 phrases are not independent. They're dependent clauses that share the same subject. So no comma goes there. Use a comma after an introductory phrase or a participial phrase. And what is that? Well, I'll show you. Terrified, Jay hid under the bed. That's called an adjective at the beginning, and it's modifying what Jay is, but his name is not Terrified Jay. It's called a participial phrase because you've got the participle, which is a conjugated form of the verb, which then becomes either a phrase or an adjective. In this case, it's going to be the adjective. Terrified, Jay hid under the bed. Terrified by the zombies, Jay hid under the bed. That is a participial phrase. In short, no one was prepared for the zombie invasion. And because they are so punctual zombies, at 2 a.m. on July 8th, they began to attack. All of those are introductory phrases or participial phrases. If you have something at the beginning, if you have an if-then statement, for instance, you have to put a comma after the if clause and before then. As we all know, zombies are punctual creatures. Okay, I anticipated my own joke there. Ha 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 ha. What else are commas used for? They are used to set off a name at the beginning of a sentence, as in, Ben, did you really bite the head off that chicken? He probably did, you know. Because you pause after someone's name at the beginning of a sentence, you would put a comma there. You would also put it at the end. If you were to say, did you really bite the head off of that chicken, Ben? You'd have to put a comma after chicken, because you're not saying that the chicken is named Ben. If you did, you would say, did you really bite the head off that chicken, Ben? With no comma, and you see there was no pause there either. If the information is extra in the sentence, in other words, non-essential or non-restrictive, those are the grammatical phrases that we use for those, set it off with commas. Karen, with whom Ben had a date, didn't much care for his way of preparing chicken. I imagine not. If you were to take with whom Ben had a date out of that sentence, you would still have a complete sentence. Karen didn't much care for his way of preparing chicken. Karen, with whom Ben had a date, is non-essential or non-restrictive information. It's extra to the sentence. It can be lifted out. Therefore, you have to have commas around it. By the way, this is the difference between using that before a phrase and using which before a phrase. The boy that Karen dated bit heads off chickens. You kind of have to have that information so you know which specific boy. However, if you're getting extra information, then you have to put it all in commas, and that's when you have which or who or whom, depending on which pronoun you're using. Karen, whom Ben was dating, didn't care for chicken after they were done dating. Yeah, you see how it works. Another use is at the end of a signal phrase or a credit tag or an attribution. And these are when you're using quotes. The teacher asked, "Do you know where that comma should go?" You have to have a comma after asked. If the sentence ends with such a phrase, you put the comma inside the quotation marks, unless, of course, it's a question or an exclamation mark, in which case it doesn't get anything. "I know where I'd like to tell you where to put it," the student replied. The comma goes inside the quotation marks. In fact, that's a rule of thumb. Whenever you have a bit of punctuation, it goes inside quotation marks. But do not use that comma where there's another mark, such as a question mark or an exclamation mark. Use commas for single word adjectives at the beginning of sentences, such as "yes, he did." Use commas to separate the date and the year. He was born on April 6th, 1970, so he's old. And use commas for parenthetical expressions or interjections at the beginning or the end. That's how you use commas, obviously. And you notice that obviously is parenthetical. Parenthetical means you can lift it out of a sentence. That's another thing. If you can put parentheses around a phrase in a sentence, it can also be set off in commas, and probably should be. Now, on that piece of paper, or in that Word document that I've been asking you to keep open, look to see how you would fix each of these sentences. Almost all are using commas. In fact, let me look through them real quick. They all are missing a comma, or two, or even three, maybe even four. What I want you to do is look and see how you would punctuate each of these sentences and how you would use the commas. Good luck with it.